If you look at our exit from Iraq and President Obama's strategy for exiting Afghanistan, we rely heavily on combat advisors. I wrote this book to answer the question, can we really do this? That is, can we build up a foreign army in our image and then slowly turn it over to that army to act in our own behalf? And I think the answer is mixed. In Iraq, we always felt that our charges, our Iraqi soldiers, were tougher than the enemy. In Afghanistan, from what I hear, the advisors believe that the Taliban are actually tougher than their own soldiers, which poses a very big problem. So the first job of the advisor is to show his charges how to fight, but they're not going to follow you unless you establish some relationships. We used to like to call our little experience on an isolated Iraqi outpost Survivor on steroids because it more resembled the television show than it did any military manual. With so many different personalities, you were constantly adjusting your own. And I think the best advisors were those who had the political skills of kind of a junior politician, some language like a border cop, and entrepreneurs, flexibility and creativity. And then you needed to have some brave folks in your team because in the end it was about fighting. So your job as an advisor is to get dropped into a foreign army and set the example in combat. But you've also, to do that effectively, got to be able to build relationships with your charges. Many of the Iraqis in our battalion we will never forget. The most beloved Iraqi officer was a man named Major Muhammad, who was the toughest man in the battalion, or should I say the self-proclaimed toughest man in the battalion. Major Muhammad never wore a flak vest or a helmet because he wanted to show the enemy he was never intimidated. But he was most loved by the Americans because he hated us most. I mean, of all the Iraqis, this was someone who couldn't stand what he called an arranged marriage by having U.S. combat advisors come in and tell him what to do. Because of this, the Americans loved him because there was no BS with him. I mean, he was the toughest guy, and we were trying to establish a climate of both individual and unit toughness. The advisor, in the end, the task is pretty simple. You've got to imbue in this foreign unit an esprit de corps, or a belief that they are tougher than the enemy. That, I think, is the biggest lasting impact that you can have as an advisor.